Hey everybody, welcome. It's Caleb. In this series, we're going to be talking about blockchain, how it's related to cryptocurrency, why it's important, should you care, should you not care. All these questions everybody's been having about this topic, we're going to answer it in this playlist. Now, when you first get started with this, it can be pretty confusing. So I encourage you to stick with it, and if you follow this playlist through to the end, you will have a very, very good foundation of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Now, this is a quickly changing industry. So what we're going to be focusing on is the core. What can we learn that is going to make learning any of these new cryptocurrencies or any of these new blockchains a lot easier? You know, each new cryptocurrency might be temporary, but these principles are eternal. And really, if you've seen some of my other content, you know, I did some database design, and really blockchain is just a form of a distributed database. So it's really not anything that crazy new. There's just a lot of concepts you have to wrap your brain around. But who is more qualified to teach databases than your boy, the one and only Caleb? Okay, I'm not the only Caleb, but how many of you guys named Caleb teach databases online? Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, I know some of you are going to watch this video like, ugh, I'm really into this blockchain thing, but this cryptocurrency stuff just gets on my nerves. And this is pretty common for some technical people. They don't really want to get into the cryptocurrency part of it. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the cryptocurrency actually makes the blockchain network possible. It protects the blockchain. And that'll be easier to understand as we get deeper into the subject. And when you go that route, you can also figure out how to use blockchain for more software projects as opposed to financial projects. But I think you'll quickly realize that these two topics are closely connected. So don't throw out cryptocurrency, embrace that, and then you'll understand blockchain. And let me tell you, there's no better way to understand cryptocurrency than to get started with it yourself. So for this series, we partnered with Crypto.com. So Crypto.com is an app you can download on your phone and sign up with the referral code Caleb. Now, this is a place where you can buy and sell cryptocurrencies. It's a great way to become familiar with a lot of different projects. But that's not all you can do with Crypto.com. One of the really good benefits of Crypto.com is that you can sign up for a debit card. What, a debit card? That's not impressive, but this is not just a normal debit card. You actually get unlimited cash back in cryptocurrency. So if you want to start earning cryptocurrency, you're not really sure where to get started, this might be one of the best places to start. When you start off, you can get a free card, or you can stake cryptocurrency. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means here in this series. But basically, you set aside a certain amount of cryptocurrency, and that'll upgrade your card tier to, for example, the Ruby card, which I recommend you get started with because when you do that, we both get $25. So if you want to support this channel, that's all I ask is that you go sign up for Crypto.com and stake enough cryptocurrency for that Ruby card. When you do this, you not only get the crypto cashback rewards, but you also get growth in your staked cryptocurrency. It's sort of like interest on your cryptocurrency. So you get a lot of different ways of making cryptocurrency with very little effort. It's a fantastic app, highly recommended. So now let's talk about what a blockchain is. Now to best understand what a blockchain is, we should understand why a blockchain is. What attributes of a blockchain make it something you might want to try? You know, some people just want to throw blockchain at every single problem. That's not always the case. You know, oh, you need a distributed system? Blockchain. You need to accept money? Here, just invent this blockchain and have your own cryptocurrency. Oh, you have a flat tire? Blockchain. Yeah, sometimes blockchain will work, but there's some very specific pieces of blockchain, and if these are important to you, then that's when you want to go the blockchain route. So the very first thing is decentralized. And this is very similar, but slightly different to distributed. And we're talking about a very general blockchain, but you know, there's not just one blockchain. There's numerous blockchains, and each one might be slightly different. But this is what most of them are going to have. So the first thing, decentralized. This refers more to ownership. So this is not owned by one particular company, one particular person, or entity. Distributed refers to location. It's not to one specific location, rather it's distributed to numerous nodes or computers across the world. So at one point you may have thought of these to be the same thing, but I think it's more appropriate to think of distributed as location and then decentralized as ownership. So those are the first two things. If these things are valuable, then using a blockchain or, possibly creating your own blockchain might be a good solution. Let's just say distributed is the only thing you care about. You want a company, you want to have some software, but you don't want it all in one data center. Well, you don't necessarily need a blockchain because distributed databases already exist. So blockchain is very focused on the decentralized aspect. We don't want one thing to own this blockchain because then that one thing has complete control over everything. If you're using an online service, say Google or, Apple, well, they own all of the servers, they control it. Some people don't want to trust that. So in a way, blockchain is all about removing trust from entities. Everything is going to be moved over to code. And we can trust that code then because you can actually see the rules and all of the nodes in this distributed network follow these rules. So those are the first two things, but then there's three more I have for you, and they're all going to start with P. So you can just remember DDPPP or DDPPP. Yeah, that's how I remember it. All right, so the next one is permissionless. So permissionless refers to the ability to join this network. So the most common example of cryptocurrency, the thing that started blockchain, Bitcoin, nobody's stopping you from just turning your computer on and turning it into a full node to be part of that Bitcoin network and support the Bitcoin blockchain. This is certainly different than with a centralized system. Imagine just calling up Apple and being like, hey, I kind of want to use my computer to store some of your guys' information, like customer data. Do you guys care? They're going to be like, what? No, this is our stuff. But with a blockchain, you can add that node to the network without any restrictions. Next thing, public. So all of the data, the transactions on the blockchain are public. We're going to get into transactions a little bit because this is really foundational to blockchain, but just stick with me for a minute. You can go to websites and you can see every single thing that happens on this blockchain. You don't always know who is doing it though. And that's because everybody has a pseudonym. So a pseudonym is like if someone writes a book, they don't use their own name, but they make up a name. That's a pseudonym. It's like an alias. And this is not quite anonymous because it's possible to associate that fake name with the person's real name. Well, it's a very similar setup in blockchain. Instead of having everybody's name or something that identifies them personally, there's going to be addresses. And these addresses don't say immediately who it is, but it's not exactly anonymous either because it is possible with enough looking around to figure out what addresses are associated with what entities or what people, what businesses, and so forth. So again, it's public, but everybody's going to have a pseudonym, so it's not very easy to figure out who is who. And last thing is it's permanent. Everything gets added to this blockchain in increments known as blocks. And once a block is added to the blockchain, it's always a part of that blockchain. It's basically a permanent history. Now, I've talked a little bit about transactions. What exactly do I mean by that? Well, blockchain, and if we look at a specific example of Bitcoin, it's designed to be a distributed ledger, which again is a history of transactions. So now we have all these attributes describing a bunch of transactions. So we can see every transaction of money to all these different entities. Again, we don't necessarily know who it's going to, but everything is public and all those transactions are permanent. You can go and see all of them on a blockchain explorer, for example. All this stuff was invented to solve a really important problem. And I'm going to describe this by drawing probably the most beautiful picture you've ever seen. All right, that's me. And I want to give you money. So here is a dollar bill, and it has numbers. And this is you over here. And you're really happy because you're making a ton of money from this transaction. This is an example of a peer-to-peer transaction. So this money goes from my hand to your hand. And then if I want to get that money back, you have to give that money back to me. So in a way, it's a permanent transaction. The only way to reverse it is to do another transaction of you then giving me that money back. Bitcoin was invented to make this exact thing possible over the internet. The problem with the internet is, up until now, every transaction was through a third party. Cash is the only system of peer-to-peer money that existed before Bitcoin. So other ways of paying you, I could have wrote you a check, I could have used a debit card, a bank wire, PayPal or Venmo, Apple Pay. Every other form of payment goes through an intermediary, someone to process and settle this payment. And a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes when that happens. So cash is really the only way to give you money directly. On the internet, there's no option to pay cash, right? So every transaction has to go through an intermediary. There's no way to pay someone directly on the internet until Bitcoin was invented. So instead of having an intermediary, let's draw the same example with the internet now. Here's me at my laptop, and I'm trying to send money to you on your laptop. I don't really like those laptops. They just look like L's. Let's make them desktops. So we might use some payment gateway or system. Let's just say PayPal. And then PayPal will send that money to you. Where Bitcoin and blockchain comes in is replacing this with a network of nodes that can make this transaction possible. So what might that look like? All right, my drawing is a little weak, but basically we have a bunch of nodes, and this transaction is going to be given to one of these nodes, and that's going to be added to the blockchain, and then that money will appear up over on your end. So instead of one centralized entity, we now have a bunch of nodes that, anybody can own one of these nodes, so it's permissionless and decentralized, and the network is what makes that transaction possible. So it's not 100% peer-to-peer in that I send from my computer directly to your computer. It's supported by a decentralized network. This drawing, in case you couldn't figure it out, each one of these are nodes. And a node is really just a word to mean a computer. Any one of these specific computers that is connected to this network. So basically, Bitcoin was introduced as a form of digital cash. That was the purpose of Bitcoin, the ability to send money directly to individuals online. Now, has it scaled the way it was originally intended? I'm not too sure about that. It seems like the majority of people are starting to think of Bitcoin as something that might be more of an asset or something to store wealth in. And that's because transactions are fairly slow, they can be expensive, and the number of transactions that the Bitcoin network can support is fairly limited. So if everybody in the world was on Bitcoin, well, it probably wouldn't work. However, there's various other cryptocurrencies that have been introduced to potentially fix this problem. And people still think of Bitcoin as like the internet gold in a way. So at the time of this writing, a Bitcoin is worth about 50 grand. However, you don't just have to buy one Bitcoin. You can actually buy fractional Bitcoin. So it's divisible to like a ton of decimals. So you don't have to have $50,000 to get started with Bitcoin. So what else should you really know before moving on? Well, there's a lot of different information that I could share with you. For one, Bitcoin is open source. That means you can go see the source code and see how it works yourself. You can go to bitcoin.org, that's the Bitcoin Foundation, where they give you resources on how to learn Bitcoin, how to get started, and how to set up a full node on your computer. But there's also a ton of other blockchains out there, and a lot of them have different purposes. So there's been blockchains, there's a fuzzy floating around. There's been blockchains introduced to help with distributed applications, and there's been blockchains introduced to help with the supply chain or, tracking a product from origin to destination. And there's a bunch of different uses of blockchain. So it's not all about peer-to-peer money sending, even though that's where it started, and the financial aspect of this is tightly rooted with blockchain. That's just part of it, and as you go on, you'll be able to really learn some of the different blockchain networks that you can get started with, where you can actually program and you can make applications that are decentralized instead of hosting them on some centralized software like AWS or Google Cloud Platform. So there's a lot of different options out there. And there's another side note I just wanted to bring up, and that is there is a lot of anarchy and some like mysterious stuff around cryptocurrency, but I don't think that always has to be the case. It seems like a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space just want to watch the world burn and then restart from the ground up. However, I think a more realistic thing that's going to happen is some of these centralized companies are going to learn to adopt this new way of thinking, and things will adapt such that things become more decentralized and less data is going to be privately hosted on a centralized distributed network. Like, for example, Apple, I think, has like 75,000 plus nodes on a Cassandra database. Well, that's still a centralized entity, even though it's distributed across the world. I think as time goes on, companies will start to back away from maybe that centralized ownership of data, even though it's extremely valuable and a lot of these big tech companies are data-hungry companies. I think they're going to realize that more and more people are becoming aware of privacy concerns, ownership concerns, and so forth. So the cryptocurrency and blockchain market is growing very fast, and I think we're still on just the bare minimum of what it's going to be in the next 10 years. So where it's going to go, I don't know. What kind of life it's going to introduce, I have no idea. However, I do think it's going to be a big part, and I think it's important to understand the foundation. So that is why I was motivated to do this series here. Now, another thing that I want to warn you just before you go on with your life, I mean, I know you're going to go and watch the second video, but just in case, there are a lot of scams with blockchain and cryptocurrency. Part of that is because it's so new and misunderstood, and another reason is any transactions are permanent. So if you accidentally give, all your money away to someone, it's gone. Part of the blockchain is shifting that ownership of your money and your life from third parties like banks or Apple or PayPal or whatever, and putting that ownership back on you. So if you send money and it's to the wrong person, well, that money is essentially gone unless they're willing to send that money back. More than likely they're not. So watch out for scams, and if you're reading comments on this video or any other videos, more than likely any of them that talk about, brokers or traders, it's all scams. And people will even copy names of popular YouTubers such as myself and comment as me, even though it's not really me. So you need to check for the highlighting to make sure it's actually from my account, because I've had significant people reach out to me saying that I was asking them for Bitcoin or something, or trying to get them to invest in something, and that is all a scam. If you're going to go into this industry, then you need to be vigilant and watch out for these scams. Not only for yourself, but help others know as well, because there's a lot of education that needs to happen for people to be able to use blockchain for everyday technology and everyday transactions. So we have a lot to go. Let's stay tuned with this series, because by the end of this, you're going to have all that figured out, and it's going to be really spectacular. Super excited for this series and where it's going to go. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments section below. Also wanted to just do a final announcement that I did create a cryptocurrency specific channel called Coin Breakthrough. Very creative. It's based off of my current website, Code Breakthrough. So I was like, oh, code, coin? It sounds kind of similar. But on that channel, it's more of a different style, getting news and updates on the industry. So if you want to stay up to date with the industry, more on the crypto side and decentralized finance and all of that stuff, then go check out Coin Breakthrough. I also have blogs for these videos. I was going to package it up into a PDF and just sell it, but I decided, since we have that sponsor, Crypto.com, if you really want to support this channel, you can go sign up for the Ruby debit card. So go check out the notes if you want the written resources for all of these videos. I think that'll be tremendously helpful just to follow along and see everything that I'm saying on paper, has the good terminology and everything you need to know. And last thing, if you want to watch all of these videos, make sure you're watching it from the playlist, as that will autoplay after each video or just go to the next one. If you enjoy this content, please be sure to click like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.